January 20th, 1993. 2 a.m. Tolochenaz, Switzerland. Audrey Hepburn is dying. Colon cancer. Hours left, maybe minutes. Her partner of 13 years, Robert Wolders, sits beside her bed, holding her hand. He's been with her through everything. Her divorce from Andrea Dotti, her UNICEF work, her battle with cancer. But he's never told her the complete truth about how their love began. Audrey's breathing is labored, painful, but her mind is clear. She looks at Robert, this man who saved her from loneliness, who gave her 13 years of genuine happiness. And she needs to say something. Something that's been weighing on her heart for over a decade. "Robert," she whispers. Her voice is barely audible. "I need to tell you something. Before I go." Robert leans closer. "What is it, darling?" "We were cursed from the beginning, weren't we?" Audrey's eyes fill with tears. "Our love, it started while Merle was dying. And I knew it was wrong. But I couldn't stop myself. I loved you. And that guilt, it followed us everywhere. For 13 years. That's why we never married. That's why I could never fully give myself to you. Because every time I was happy, I remembered her, lying in that hospital bed, while we fell in love." Robert starts to speak, but Audrey continues. "I'm sorry. For using you, for loving you, for making you wait 13 years for something I could never give you. The marriage, the complete commitment. I was always holding back because of her, because of how we began." Robert's eyes flood with tears. Because Audrey is right. Their entire 13-year relationship was built on a foundation of guilt. A guilt so profound it prevented them from ever making their love official, ever fully committing, ever forgiving themselves for how their happiness required someone else's suffering. "You didn't make me wait," Robert says quietly. "I understood. From the beginning, I understood." "Did you?" Audrey asks. "Or did you just accept it because you felt guilty too?" Silence. Because they both know the answer. Their love was real, genuine, beautiful. But it was also stained, forever marked by the circumstances that created it. The death that brought them together. The betrayal that made their happiness possible. 3 hours later, Audrey Hepburn dies. Robert is holding her hand, the woman he loved for 13 years, the woman who gave him the best years of his life, the woman who could never marry him because their love was born from someone else's death. This is that story. The final love affair nobody talks about. The 13 years of happiness shadowed by 13 years of guilt. The relationship that could have been perfect. Except it started with a lie. The confession that came too late to change anything, but just in time to finally tell the truth. To understand what Robert confessed to Audrey in her final hours, you need to go back to 1979, when everything began. When Robert Wolders was married to Merle Oberon, one of Hollywood's legendary beauties from the 1930s and 40s. Wuthering Heights, the lodger. A star who'd hidden her mixed-race heritage her entire career. A woman who'd conquered Hollywood through sheer force of will and carefully constructed lies about her past. But by 1979, Merle was 68 years old and dying. Multiple strokes had left her partially paralyzed. Diabetes complications were destroying her body. She was bedridden most days. When she was conscious, she often didn't recognize Robert. The vibrant, beautiful woman he'd married in 1973 was gone. What remained was a shell, a body waiting to die. Robert was 49. He'd been caring for Merle for 6 years. 6 years of watching someone he loved slowly disappear. 6 years of being a nurse instead of a husband. 6 years of having no life outside Merle's sick room. He was exhausted, lonely, desperate for any kind of human connection that didn't involve medical equipment and suffering. That's when he met Audrey. February 1980, a charity event in Los Angeles. UNICEF fundraiser. Audrey was there as a supporter. She wouldn't become an official ambassador until 1988. She was 50 years old, recently divorced from Andrea Dotti after 13 years of marriage and 200 confirmed affairs. She was raw, wounded, trying to rebuild her life as a single woman. Robert noticed her immediately, not because she was Audrey Hepburn, though of course he knew who she was, but because she looked lost, sad, like someone who understood pain. When she spoke about the children UNICEF was trying to help, her voice broke. Genuine emotion, not performance. Real tears for real suffering. During the cocktail reception, Robert approached her. "That was a beautiful speech," he said. "Thank you," Audrey replied. When I see what these children go through, I remember my own childhood during the war. The hunger, the fear. I can't help but think, what if someone had helped us?" They talked for an hour about UNICEF, about childhood trauma, about survival, about loss. Robert didn't mention Merle. Audrey didn't mention Andrea. Just two damaged people finding unexpected connection. When the evening ended, Robert gave Audrey his card. "If you're ever in the area," he said carefully, "perhaps we could have dinner. I don't have many friends who understand complicated situations." Audrey understood. She could see the sadness in Robert's eyes, the exhaustion, the loneliness of someone who was giving everything to care for someone else. "I'd like that," she said. And that's how it began. Innocent dinners, conversations about art, literature, travel. Robert would drive down from Malibu to meet Audrey in Los Angeles. Always careful to be back by evening, back to Merle's bedside, back to his duty as husband and caretaker. For months, nothing happened. Just friendship. Just two lonely people who made each other feel less alone. Robert never spoke about his feelings. Audrey never acknowledged hers. They were both too damaged, too careful, too aware of boundaries. But by summer 1980, something had shifted. The conversations had become more intimate, more personal. They'd started meeting more frequently. Robert would find excuses to drive to Los Angeles. Business meetings, doctor appointments, anything that gave him a few hours away from Malibu, a few hours with Audrey. These forgotten stories deserve to be told. If you think so too, subscribe and like this video. Thank you for keeping these memories alive. One evening in August 1980, they were having dinner at a quiet restaurant in Beverly Hills. Audrey looked at Robert across the table. This kind, gentle man who was sacrificing his life to care for a woman who no longer knew who he was. And she felt her heart break, not just for herself, but for him. "How long has she been sick?" Audrey asked quietly. 6 years, Robert said. "Since the first stroke. She was 62. I thought we'd have more time, but..." He shrugged. "Life doesn't ask what you want." "And you've been caring for her alone?" "There are nurses. But yes, mostly alone. Her family lives in England. Her friends, They stopped visiting when it became clear she wouldn't recover. That must be so lonely for you. Robert looked at Audrey, really looked at her. It was. Until I met you. The words hung between them, dangerous, honest, true. Robert, Audrey said carefully, I don't want to complicate your life. You have enough. You don't complicate my life, Robert interrupted. You make it bearable. These past few months, thinking about seeing you, it's the only thing that gets me through. And I know that's not fair to you. I know I have nothing to offer. I'm married to a dying woman. I can't promise you anything. I can't even promise you tomorrow. But I need you to know. You've saved me. Just by existing. Just by caring. Audrey reached across the table, took Robert's hand. I care about you too. More than I should. More than is wise. What do we do with that? Robert asked. I don't know, Audrey whispered. But I know I can't stop seeing you, even though I should. Even though it's wrong. I can't. That night, they kissed for the first time. In the parking lot of the restaurant, hidden between cars, secret, stolen, wrong, and absolutely, completely right. The affair that would define the rest of both their lives had begun. For 3 months, Robert and Audrey conducted their relationship in shadows. Secret meetings, stolen afternoons. Robert would drive to Los Angeles when Merle was sleeping. When the nurses were watching her. When he could get away for a few hours without being missed. They didn't sleep together. Not yet. But the emotional intimacy was complete. They talked about everything. Their fears, their regrets, their dreams. Robert told Audrey about watching Merle disappear piece by piece. About feeling guilty for being healthy while she suffered. About wondering if he was a terrible person for wanting his own life back. Audrey told Robert about Andrea's affairs, about feeling invisible, about watching her marriage die slowly, like a plant denied water, about wondering if she'd ever feel wanted again, desired, loved. With each other, they both felt alive, seen, understood, but they also felt the weight of what they were doing. Robert was married. Audrey was complicit in an affair with a man whose wife was dying. It was indefensible. It was also irresistible. November 1980. Merle's condition worsened. The doctors called Robert to the hospital. Another stroke, this time massive. She was unconscious. The doctors gave her days, maybe weeks. Robert sat by her bedside for 3 days straight, holding her hand. Talking to her even though she couldn't hear, saying goodbye to the woman she used to be. On the 3rd day, Robert called Audrey. It's happening, he said. It's almost over. I'm so sorry, Audrey said. And she meant it. Despite everything, despite their affair, despite her feelings for Robert, she was genuinely sorry for Merle's suffering. For Robert's pain, for the tragedy of watching someone die slowly. I keep thinking, Robert said quietly, about what comes after, when she's gone, when I'm free, and I feel guilty for even thinking about it. But I can't help it. I think about you, about us, about whether we could actually be together without all this secrecy. Don't think about that now, Audrey said. Just be with her. Say whatever you need to say. Do whatever you need to do. The rest can wait. But Robert was already thinking about the rest. About a future with Audrey. About love, without guilt, about happiness without shame, about being together openly, honestly, completely. He was wrong about the guilt part. November 23rd, 1980. Merle Oberon died. She was 69 years old. Robert was holding her hand when she passed. The woman he'd married 7 years earlier. The woman he'd cared for through 6 years of illness. The woman he'd promised to love in sickness and in health. He'd kept that promise, right until the end, but he'd also broken it. Because for the last 8 months, while Merle lay dying, Robert had been falling in love with someone else. The funeral was small. Merle's family from England, a few old Hollywood friends who remembered her glory days, industry people who felt obligated to attend. Robert stood beside the casket and delivered a eulogy about love and loss and devotion. Words that were true. He had loved Merle, had devoted himself to her care, but also incomplete. Because he didn't mention that for the final months of Merle's life, his heart had belonged to someone else. After the funeral, after the reception, after all the guests had gone home, Robert was alone in the house he'd shared with Merle, surrounded by her things, her photos, her memories, and all he could think about was Audrey. He called her that night. "She's gone," he said. "I know," Audrey replied. "I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I don't know. I should be sad. I am sad. But I also feel relieved, and that makes me feel like a monster." "You're not a monster," Audrey said firmly. "You cared for her beautifully. You sacrificed years of your life. You were a devoted husband. Feeling relieved doesn't make you evil. It makes you human." "What happens now?" Robert asked. "Between us?" "I don't know," Audrey said honestly. "We need time. You need time to grieve, to process, to figure out who you are without Merle. And I need time to think about what this means, what we mean." "I love you," Robert said. "I need you to know that, whatever happens next, I love you." "I love you too," Audrey whispered. "And that's what makes this so complicated." They didn't see each other for 6 weeks. Robert needed to handle Merle's estate. Audrey needed to think, to decide if she could build a relationship on the foundation of what felt like betrayal. Even though Merle was gone, the guilt remained. They'd fallen in love while she was dying. That fact would never change. But love is stronger than guilt, sometimes. January 1981. Robert called Audrey. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything. About us, about Merle. And I've realized something. Merle wouldn't want me to be alone. She was many things, complicated, difficult, demanding, but she wasn't cruel. She loved me. And people who love you want you to be happy, even after they're gone." "Do you really believe that?" Audrey asked. "I'm trying to," Robert said. "Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life punishing myself for falling in love. And that seems like a waste of my life, of your life, of what we could have together. And if I said yes, if I said, let's try this, let's be together, could you forgive yourself? Could you forget how it started?" Robert was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I'd like to find out. With you." So they tried. Audrey and Robert began their official relationship in February 1981, 13 years before Audrey's death. 13 years of trying to build happiness on a foundation of guilt. At first, it seemed like it might work. They were good together, compatible. Robert was kind, patient, supportive. Audrey was warm, generous, loving. They traveled together, supported each other's work, built a life that looked, from the outside, like genuine happiness. But the guilt never fully went away. When they were happiest, laughing together, traveling, making love, one of them would remember. Remember Merle. Remember how their love began. Remember that their happiness was built on someone else's suffering. And the moment would be tainted. Just slightly. Just enough. Friends noticed. Audrey would talk about Robert with obvious love and affection. But when someone asked why they didn't get married, she'd deflect. Change the subject. Make excuses. We don't need a piece of paper. Marriage ruined my last 2 relationships. We're happy as we are. But the real reason was simpler and more complicated. Audrey couldn't marry Robert because their relationship felt cursed. Born from betrayal, built on guilt. Marrying him would feel like celebrating something that started with someone else's death. She couldn't do it. Robert understood. He carried the same guilt, the same sense that their love was tainted. He never proposed, never pressured Audrey about marriage, because he knew why she couldn't say yes, and he couldn't blame her. So for 13 years, they lived in limbo, together but not married, committed but not completely, loving each other but never fully forgiving themselves for how that love began. 1988, Audrey becomes a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Her humanitarian work gives her purpose, meaning, a way to transform her pain into something useful. She travels to Ethiopia, Bangladesh, Somalia. She sees children who are suffering the way she suffered during the war, and she uses her fame to help them. If you want more untold stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Your support means everything to us. Robert supports this work completely. He travels with her sometimes, helps organize her schedule, manages her business affairs. He's proud of her, proud of what she's becoming. This work is healing her in ways their love couldn't, giving her peace in ways their relationship never could. But it also makes their personal guilt more acute. Here's Audrey, saving children around the world, being noble, selfless, good. And their relationship, their love, is built on selfishness, on taking what they wanted regardless of who it hurt. The contrast is painful. 1991. Audrey is diagnosed with colon cancer. Appendiceal adenocarcinoma. Advanced, inoperable. The doctors give her months. Suddenly, the guilt about how their relationship began seems less important. Audrey is dying. Time is running out. Robert dedicates himself completely to her care, just like he did for Merle. The irony isn't lost on either of them. But caring for Audrey is different. Audrey isn't disappearing the way Merle did. Her mind stays sharp. Her personality remains intact. She's facing death with grace and dignity, and she wants to use whatever time she has left to do good, to help children, to make amends for whatever sins she thinks she's committed. December 1992, Audrey's final UNICEF trip, Somalia. She's so weak she can barely walk, but she insists on going, on seeing the children one more time, on using her voice to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Robert tries to talk her out of it. "You're too sick," he says. "This trip could kill you." "I'm dying anyway," Audrey replies. "At least this way, My death might mean something. She goes to Somalia, films her final appeals for UNICEF, returns home exhausted, skeletal, but peaceful. She's done what she came to do, made her final contribution. Now, she can let go. January 1993. Audrey's final weeks. She's in bed most days now. Robert rarely leaves her side. They talk about their 13 years together, the good times, the travel, the love, the happiness, but also the guilt, the shadow that hung over everything. One evening, as Robert is helping Audrey with her medication, she says quietly, "Do you think Merle would forgive us?" Robert stops, sets down the pills, looks at Audrey. "What do you mean?" "For starting while she was dying. For falling in love while she was suffering. Do you think she'd understand?" Robert considers this. "I think," he says carefully, "that Merle was human. And humans are complicated. Part of her might be angry, but part of her might be glad that I found love again. That I didn't spend my whole life mourning her." "But we didn't wait," Audrey says. "We didn't wait until after. We started before, while she was still alive. That's different." "Yes," Robert agrees. "It is different. It's messier, more human, more real." "More wrong," Audrey whispers. "Maybe, but also more honest. Love doesn't wait for convenient timing. It just happens. And maybe that's not our fault. Maybe that's just life." Audrey wants to believe this, but she's not sure she can. Even dying, she's carrying guilt about their happiness. January 19th, 1993. Audrey's final full day of consciousness. Robert is sitting beside her bed. They've been talking about her sons, about her work, about her legacy, about what she wants people to remember. Then Audrey looks at Robert with clear eyes and says, "I need to tell you something about us, about our 13 years together." Robert waits. "We were cursed from the beginning, weren't we?" Audrey says. "Our love, it started with death, with betrayal, and that stain never left us. That's why we never married. That's why I could never fully give myself to you. Because every time I was happy with you, I thought about Merle, lying in that hospital bed while we fell in love. And I felt like a thief, like I'd stolen something that wasn't mine to take." Robert's eyes fill with tears. "Audrey, no. Let me finish. I'm sorry for not being braver, for not loving you completely, for letting guilt poison what we had. You deserved better. You deserved a woman who could love you without reservation, without shame. But I couldn't be that woman. The guilt was too strong." "You loved me perfectly," Robert says. "Exactly as much as you could. And that was enough. It was always enough." "Was it? Really?" "Yes," Robert says firmly. "Because you gave me 13 years. 13 years of real love. Complicated love, maybe. Guilty love sometimes. But real. And that's more than most people get in a lifetime." Audrey smiles. The first real smile Robert has seen in weeks. We were human, weren't we? Just human. Making mistakes, trying to find happiness, hurting people along the way, but human. Yes, Robert whispers. We were human, darling. And for the first time in 13 years, Audrey looks peaceful. Not guilty, not ashamed, just peaceful. Like she's finally forgiven herself. Forgiven them both. January 20th, 1993. 2 a.m. Audrey's final hours. She's unconscious most of the time now. But occasionally she opens her eyes, looks at Robert, squeezes his hand. At 1:30 a.m., she opens her eyes one last time, looks directly at Robert, and says very clearly, "We were human, darling. That's all. Just human." At 2 a.m., she stops breathing. Robert is holding her hand. The woman he loved for 13 years is gone. And her last words to him were forgiveness. For both of them. After Audrey's death, Robert found letters she'd written but never sent. Dozens of them. All about their relationship, their guilt, her struggle to forgive herself for loving him while Merle was dying. One letter, dated 1985, 8 years into their relationship, read, "I love you so much it frightens me, but I can't shake the feeling that our happiness came at someone else's expense, that we're living a life we don't deserve. I want to marry you. I want to give myself to you completely. But how can I celebrate love that began with betrayal?" Another from 1990. 13 years we've been together, and I still wake up some mornings feeling guilty, wondering if Merle's spirit is watching us, wondering if she's angry, wondering if love can ever be pure when it begins with someone else's suffering. The final letter, written just weeks before her death. I'm dying, and all I can think about is you. How much I love you. How grateful I am for 13 years of happiness. How sorry I am that guilt poisoned some of our time together. If I could do it again, would I change anything? Would I wait until after Merle died? Would I resist falling in love with you? No, I wouldn't. Because loving you was the best thing I ever did. Even if it started wrong. Even if it hurt someone. Even if it cost us both years of guilt. I would choose you again. Every time. Robert kept these letters until his own death in 2018. 25 years after Audrey died. He never remarried. Never had another serious relationship. Just lived quietly in the house they'd shared, surrounded by her memory, carrying her final forgiveness like a gift. In his own final days, when friends asked if he regretted anything about his relationship with Audrey, Robert would say, "I regret the timing. I regret that we fell in love while Merle was dying. But I don't regret loving Audrey. And I don't regret the 13 years we had together. They were complicated. They were guilty. But they were also beautiful. And sometimes beautiful things come at a price. We paid that price, both of us, for 13 years, and in the end, it was worth it." This is the story of Robert Wolders and Audrey Hepburn. 13 years of love, shadowed by 13 years of guilt. A relationship that could have been perfect if it had started differently. If they'd met after Merle died. If the timing had been different. If love waited for convenient moments. But love doesn't wait. Love happens when it happens. And sometimes that timing is terrible. Sometimes love requires betrayal. Sometimes happiness comes at someone else's expense. Sometimes you fall in love with the wrong person at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, and it's still the most real thing you've ever experienced. Audrey and Robert loved each other completely, but they could never forgive themselves completely. The guilt followed them for 13 years, prevented them from marrying, prevented them from being entirely happy, prevented them from having the uncomplicated love story they both wanted. But in Audrey's final hours, she gave them both a gift: forgiveness. Not absolution. What they'd done was still wrong. Merle had still died while they fell in love. That fact would never change. But forgiveness, anyway. Because they were human. Because humans make mistakes. Because love is messy and complicated and sometimes requires terrible choices. We were human, darling. 5 words that freed them both. Too late to change their 13 years of guilt, but just in time to let Robert live the rest of his life without shame. Just in time to let Audrey die at peace. Their love was cursed, but it was also blessed. Cursed by how it began, blessed by how it ended, with forgiveness, with understanding, with the recognition that sometimes wrong choices lead to right love, and sometimes that's enough. This is Audrey Hepburn, The Hidden Truth. From wartime horrors to Hollywood secrets, we uncover what they've been hiding for decades. Subscribe to discover the dark truth behind the elegant image.